morning, everybody, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We are here today, our first show of the new year. Happy New Year, Joel.
Happy New Year, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We missed a couple of weeks here, and it feels like a whole new year, whole new show. Now
Yeah,
we
what's
just
this
have
podcast about?
the world and
Oh,
discord in the world.
I've heard of the
That's
world.
exactly. It's a place where we live.
I've been there.
Today, I don't think you have
Nope.
actually. Today, we'll get a little more serious than this. We're going to talk about the Kurdish people and what is often called Kurdistan. It is a nation, it is a group of people without a state. The Kurdish region is in the geographical region of the Middle East. It includes about 18 million people, 30 million total, about 18 million in Turkey, 8 million in Iran, 5 million in Iraq, 2 million in Syria. So it cuts across those four states in the Middle East. The Kurdish people are a minority in each of those areas, but an important one. But they're really geographically held together, and they have a very common culture, even if there are some different languages, different religions, and political factions among the Kurdish people. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that as a broad based introduction to what we're going to talk about and turn it over to Joel to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Brian. I'm really, really excited. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. Karwan and I have been trying to find a good time to do this. We're joined by Karwan Gaznay, from Erbil, Iraq. Um, I've known Karwan. Well, we met 10 years ago. Can you believe it, buddy? At Benedictine University, we held a grant from the State Department called the Middle East Partnership Initiative. It was the Student Leaders Program. Under that broader program, the State Department created after 9/11 to try to bridge the gap between the American people, really, and the people across the Middle East, North Africa region. Karwan participated in 2014 in our program at Benedictine. Um, from my perspective as the grant director at the time, was far and away the most serious of that group of participants on our campus. It was a bit of a troubled summer. I think that's fair to say. Karwan, would you agree with that adjective for that summer? Um, but he was a tremendously interested in every subject and a brilliant mind. Um, we'll talk a little bit, I hope, about his journey upon his return back to Iraq, where most recently he has been an activist in one of the parties up in Erbil. He's a former member of the Kurdish Parliament. He's currently completing a doctorate in political science. Really knowledgeable about the Kurdish people. And I've referred to you, Karwan, I don't know if I have in person, but when I've described you to others as a Kurdish nationalist, and I always qualify that as in the most positive sense of the word. My students who listen to this will know that I don't always use that word nationalist in a positive way. In fact, almost never. But as I've come to learn about Kurdistan from you, I've come to sympathize with the cause of the Kurdish people and empathize with the plight. There's a lot familiar in your story and the Kurdish story as a stateless people to those of many other stateless peoples throughout history and currently. Um, because most Americans don't know too much about the Kurds. Here in the Midwest and Wisconsin, people will think that Kurds are cheese. Um, I will hope that you could give us a little history on. It's almost a stupid question, but who are the Kurdish people? And as Brian was giving the overview, how did Kurdistan end up not having a state, given the territorial integrity of the Kurdish nationality?
Thank you very much, Joel. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for hosting me today about a very important question to me, at least, and I hope it will be important to my audience as well, as we are talking about a group of people who are more than 14 million people around the world, especially in the Middle East, and without having a country and having a flag. They have a flag They have a land, they have a language, they don't have a country, which is kind of weird actually. That's not might be possible anywhere in the world except this part of my planet, unfortunately. If we talk about the history of Kurdish people in general, Joel, we can go back to a long history, back to the Medes Empire, where some people believe that they were Kurds actually, and we do believe that they were Kurds. Even if you go back, flip over the historical pages, we have got lots of pages and lots of history about the Kurdish people. But let's not go back too far, so the audience will not be confused about this matter. So let's start from 1920s. Early of 1920s, after the creation and launching nation state in the Middle East, especially with the Kemalist state in Turkey, Kemal Atatürk in Turkey in 1920. After that, the Lausanne Treaty was signed among some of the countries in the West, and they were divided. They divided Kurdistan into four major parts. Sorry, one in Syria, one in Turkey, one in Iraq, and one in Iran. And some people believe that some of the Kurds are living still in Russia. And of course, we do know that there's the Kurdish diaspora around the world, in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, mostly in the United Kingdom, in Germany, and lots of other places around the world. So what we have to concentrate on the fact that what we have right now, if we start part by part, so people know exactly what we are talking about, the part from Turkey, there were lots of revolutionists against the Turkish government back to 1920s, for example, under the presidency of Sheikh Said Piran in 1925. And later he was executed and he was captured by the government, and it was suppressed by the Turkish government back then, back to 1925. And later, lots of other revolutions started, like, for example, still in northern Kurdistan, headed by Abdullah Öcalan, head of PKK. And what we see right now in Syria is still the aftermath of this kind of revolution that happened in Turkey in 1979, led by Abdullah Öcalan. And if you talk about the Kurdistan regional government, which means southern Kurdistan, which is Iraqi Kurdistan, of course, there were lots of revolutionists. For example, one led by Mullah Mustafa Barzani, and later it was the new revolution by Man Jalal, as we call President Jalal Talabani in 1975, when he filled the gap. And later on, they tried to revolt. And in 1991, with the help of the coalition forces, after the uprising of the Kurdistan regional government, we launched and established the first Kurdistan government. So in Iraqi Kurdistan in 1992, we launched the first Iraqi Kurdish government, and that was preserved and protected by the international coalition, especially the United States, by establishing no-fly zone in the area, so Saddam Hussein could not come back to this area, and using air forces against the Kurds. And that's why we had the Kurdistan Parliament election, and later we created the government and the Kurdistan presidency as well. And unfortunately, that was erupted by the civil war in 1994 between the Kurdistan Democratic Party and Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the two major political parties in the Kurdistan region. And
Can
later
I
in
interrupt? You're
2005,
talking about, just interrupt. Right now, you're talking about the area just northern Iraq, right? So this doesn't
yes,
include the other sort of
no,
Kurdish
no. As I
population
talked about
centers.
I talked about
Okay,
Turkey. Now I'm talking about Iran, the Kurdish party in
got it.
Iraq. After the,
Thank
after
you.
the collapse of Saddam Hussein and the liberation of Iraq in 2003, in 2005, the two administrations in the Kurdistan region reconciled, and we create a new government that was called the Kurdistan Regional Government and led by PUK and KDP. And in Iran, it's unfortunate that still we have not had the chance to somehow uh, get federalism or even participate in the government, or even they don't have even rights, any political rights in Iran. In Syria, as you know, the situation right now that starts from 2011, after the rebellion started against Bashar al-Assad in 2011, the Kurdish people participated, and that still goes on, and that still continues, and you see the theater right now. This somehow a very, 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 very short history of the Kurdish people in all the parts of the Kurdistan, and now we can talk about the details of this area. Let's talk about the south.
Excellent. If I can interrupt for a second, so what I'm hearing and what you're describing is a Kurdish people who've been under dictatorships or authoritarian governments in four different states, and slightly different dynamics to each of those, but they've each ended with the Kurdish people staying together, but not having a state of their own. One thing that comes into my mind, just to start right here, why are these authoritarian governments over time, since the 1920s, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Syrians, the Turks, why are they so interested in these regions that have the Kurdish people in them? Is there anything particular to the regions that keeps these governments wanting to avoid having a breaking off of the Kurdish people and giving sovereignty to the Kurdish people?
Or regional autonomy, even if that's short of sovereignty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
federalism.
I think, Brian, that's a very interesting question. For that, we have to look at the internal and external problems that face the Kurdish people in all the parts of Kurdistan, in all these countries, in Turkey,
Right.
Iran, Syria, and Iraq. Each part has a different feature. Like, for example,
Hmm.
we can say that some indigenous issues, some internal issues about the Kurdish people, like, for example, the issues among the Kurdish people, that can be marked as one of the main factors why Kurdish people could not able to get independence. That's one. Second, there are external forces, factors, like, for example, the international actors, the international community might not have come to the conclusion that support this Kurdish people all to come together. And that might be a bit difficult for the time being. But when I'm looking at the situation, I think that each part of Kurdistan from each country might get its autonomy, or it is get its federalism within the context of this country. For example, what we have right now in Iraq as the Kurdistan region, we have an autonomy and we have federalism and we have our government and we have our constitution with the Iraqi government, we have our parliament, we have everything. It's all based on the written constitution that was agreed upon by all the Iraqi political elites in 2005 with the observation of the international community, especially the United States. And this, according to this constitution, we do have the chance to have the parliament, the government, and the presidency of the Kurdistan region. So I'm looking forward to have or to see exactly what's happening in the region in Iraq to happen in Syria or probably in Turkey in the near future, or in Iran. I don't know whether that will be possible. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not anytime soon. But I think that the situation of each part of Kurdistan is different. For example, in Syria, it is different.
Right.
Like the Kurds in
Yeah.
Syria, if you give me the sport, I'm just going to talk about a brief history of the Kurdish people in Syria. That's where the international eye is on right now. That's what's on the media in the West right now, which is Kurdistan part of Syria. Well, if you look at the part of Syria map, geographically, they are in the northeastern part of Syria, which is somehow between Turkey and Syria. This is the top of north of
Mhm.
Syria. That's one thing. And some areas that the Kurdish people are located are basically Kobane, Afrin, Jazeera, even Euphrates, even Aleppo and Damascus. Uh, there are even Kurds in Damascus down to the middle of the country. And for the history of this people, there are two kind of thoughts for that. Some people believe that the Kurdish people migrated against the Kemalist state in 1920 to Syria back to 1920. And some people believe that's not true. Kurdish people have a long historical roots in this area, back to Salahuddin Ayyubi. I mean, Ayyubid dynasty in 1171 to 1317 in this area, which was, I mean, the capital was Damascus, and Salahuddin was a Kurd from Tikrit, and that's why we can have lots of areas named after the Kurdish people. Like, for example, we had a place Salahuddini district, that means Salahuddini quarter. Okay, that's in Syria. So this a long history of the Kurdish people in this area. But in 2011, after the revolution started, demonstrations started against Bashar al-Assad, the Kurdish people actively participate in this demonstrations. And later, SDF, Syrian Democratic Forces, participated in the armed forces in armed escalation in the area, and they fought against the Bashar's regime. In fact, they fought against ISIS, and they could protect these areas against ISIS. Otherwise, ISIS could have captured all those areas. Okay,
Right.
so now after Bashar, so we do have Tahrir al-Sham, we have Kurdish people, which is SDF, and we have the Turkish government, we have other international actors, we have Israel, we have the US, we have also UK, we have Russia, we have France. We don't know exactly how the situation is. It's getting really complicated, honestly. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, especially while we have Jolani in power right now and who's holding power in his hands. We don't know exactly. We do know his background. We don't know his idea for the future. We don't know exactly what he wants to do for the Syrian people. We don't know exactly what the constitution is going to like that they're about to write in the future. So this part of Syria has its own features that's very complicated, honestly. So on the ice, all the
Yeah.
ice right now on the Syrian part of Kurdistan. So
Right.
I
It,
don't know.
it sounds
Yeah,
like in Iraq, from you're just comparing Iraq and Syria, which I think is very appropriate. It sounds like Iraq is more clear cut. And one of the main things that you're talking about here is the importance of the outside influences in creating whether an autonomous Kurdish region or not. So in Iraq, this really started in 1992 with the U.S. pushing Saddam out of Kuwait, and then in 2005, after the 2003 conflict, with the U.S. supporting an autonomous Kurdistan with the no fly regions and then with autonomy in the constitution. And then we get over to Syria, where U.S. and Western involvement is helping the Kurdish people, but it's a whole lot more complicated and an enormously greater number of actors with different perspectives. It really seems like that external role, external actors are incredibly important to the freedom and the sovereignty and at least the autonomy for Kurds in this region. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
but I didn't get the last part of your question actually.
Sure. It seems like the external actors are
Uh-huh.
incredibly important. Like it would be difficult for the Kurdish people to
Yeah.
do it, but
Well,
in Iraq, the external actors are settled. In Syria, they're not.
yeah, fair enough. Well, I think that the situation in Syria has a different, as I told you, a different feature. I mean, well, we have to look at the situation from a different direction for the Syrian uh, government and crisis in general. Lots of actors are playing right now in the area. Like, for example, as I told you, that new challenges are on the way, upcoming challenges for the Syrian government. Firstly, that we have to talk about the challenges. For example, what does Iran do in this area? Or what does Iran
Yeah.
want in this area? Now Iran's really
Yeah.
weak. They might not have lots of power, but in the near future, exactly, we don't know the reaction of Iran towards the government. That's one. Number two, we don't know exactly what the United States want. I mean, they say that we want a democratic country,
Neither
we
do
want a
we.
democratic government. Sorry, I didn't get.
I
The
said
United
neither do
States doesn't know
we.
what the United States wants.
Uh, uh,
Well, the strategy of the U.S. is clear on TV that they say we do want a democratic country or government in Syria. Of course, everyone wants the same thing, but
yeah.
what do they want exactly? What does the government want? I mean, as a
Yeah.
strategic point for the American government in the future, that's one. Second, we have to look at Jolani again, whether he's going to go with the direction of Turkey or direction of Saudi Arabia, because as you know that this gap was in 1929 was filled out by Hassan Banna, and there are two directions
And just
for
to be
Islamic.
clear for everyone, Jelani, just to be clear for everyone, I'm sorry, Jelani is the current Syrian leader. We don't know how long
Yeah,
that's going to last or if it's going to last a long time, but
yeah,
he's important right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jolani is the head
Yeah.
of Tahrir al-Sham, who was fighting as an opposition group. He was fighting against Bashar al-Assad. Now he's controlling and ruling the country. Well, we know that there was a political gap after the collapse of Ottoman Empire in 1929, and Hassan Banna filled out this gap. And this Islamic movement had two different directions. One was called Wahhabism, one was called Ikhwan Muslimin. Wahhabism is somehow later end up with having Saudi Arabia, and Ikhwan was end up having Turkish government. And now we have this Ikhwan and Wahhabism in Saudi and Turkey at the same time. So we don't know exactly whether Jolani is going to go with Saudi or he's going to go with
Hmm.
Turkish one. And that's going to be another clash that might be facing, another challenge that might be facing the Syrian government in the near future. That's one.
Yeah.
That's second. The third one is the forces within the Syrian government. I mean, SDF and Tahrir al-Sham, like the Kurdish people and Jolani. How do they go along? How are they going to along? And how will they get to an agreement about leading the Syrian government in the future? What kind of constitution they are going to agree upon? What are going to be the rights of the minorities? Like, what is going to be the political system in the country? It's going to be an Islamic state. It's going to be a democratic state. It's going to be what, a mixture of both. It's going to be. We don't
Yeah.
really know.
It's all
We
an
don't really
open
know.
question, right?
Yeah.
It's all an
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I
The
ask a
point of
quick
interrogation
question?
is. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because I want to go back to your nice descriptions of sort of the Kurdish um, situations in the four different countries. Um, this is going to be a typical Ostrow stupid question, but here we go. Um, if how to put it. Well, let's go to this. In Iraq, for example, um, first in the toppling of Saddam Hussein, and then the defeat of ISIS. Kurdish forces played decisive roles, in very important roles in both of those, as they are and have been in Syria. Um, if you had to sort of describe the balance, like among the Kurdish forces, was the primary orientation to oppose, on the one hand, Saddam Hussein, on the other, Bashar al-Assad, or were they organized to create an independent Kurdistan? Do you see what I'm asking? Like,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it more like protection against? How much are
It was
these
more
sort
like
of
what?
so yeah, to what extent are these forces revolutionary in the sense of trying to create an independent Kurdistan? And then
No,
part B,
I
across the borders, how united are they? Are they independent of each other, or is there sort of coordination and an integrated sort of movement? It's two parts of the same question, I guess.
Yeah. Well, for the relationship, actually, yeah, there is a good relationship between, for example, some parties, especially PUK, in the Iraqi Kurdistan and in Syria with SDF. And also, there are links among all these political parties. They have, for example, Anakasa and KDP from South and from Syria. So there are relations among these political parties. That's one. Second, as these parties fought for independence, I don't think so. Well, I think that I told you, Joel, a long time ago, back to 2014, that I told you that we do have our rights to hold our Kurdish passport and to have our independent state, but we have to work for that. We have to have the mainstays of a state, then we are going to declare a state. As you know, that we are landlocked, so we don't have to look for establishing a state as a pure Kurdish state. Since in Kurdistan region, for example, in my part of the world, in Iraq, we have Assyrians, we have Chaldeans, we have Turkmen, we have Kurds, we have all these nationalities. So even if we are going to fight for independence, we have to fight for a state based on citizenship, not based
Yeah.
on nationalistic ideas. That's one. Second, we are landlocked. We don't have lots of. I mean, look at our neighbors. We have Iran, we have Turkey, we have Syria, and we have Iraq. I mean, as a part of we are part of Iraq, of course, for now, and we don't know exactly whether this is a right time or not. Back to 2017, when the referendum was held, and it was decided by the Kurdish political elite, some of the people believe that it's not the right time. We have to wait, since we have the guarantee from the the the, the United States that we have to postpone our referendum. We should have listened for that. We might have greater chance in the future, but for the time being, we have to intensify and we have to be strengthening our relationship with the Iraqi government, the central government, and we have to fight for our rights through and through the Iraq constitution. We do have a constitution, and this constitution would guarantee the rights of the Kurdish people and the Arab people and the Turkmen and the Chaldeans and Assyrians and everybody. So if we can get our rights through the constitution, I think this part of Iraq would be fine for the time being. I don't know exactly what's going to happen for the future. As for Syria, whether they fought for independence, I don't think so. Also, they fought for probably for federalism, I don't know, or probably fighting to participate in the government. But which type of government? Then this is the question that we have to ask for the time being. We have to know exactly what's in the mind of Jolani and what is the aim and the strategy of the international community in this area. For example, Israel, Russia, the US, the UK, France, etc., and so on, Iran, and since they have influence over the area and they have a very long history together, whether it is about the conflict, whether it's about creating the government, all these people have to come to the table of negotiation. And in fact, I do believe that the Kurdish question now must be solved through through negotiations on the table of negotiation. I was in the conference in Lausanne in 2024, 23 actually, 2 years ago, and I participated in the conference. I gave a speech in front of all the people, and I said that we are not here to say that we are going to declare independence. We are here to say that we do believe that our issue has to be solved through negotiations. I mean, we have to. They kill lots of Kurdish people. Like for example, Turkish government killed lots of people from the Kurdish side, destroy lots of and suppress lots of revolutions from the Kurdistan in Turkey. Iraqi government did the same. Saddam Hussein did the same. Bashar did the same. Iran did the same. What happened? The question is still there. I mean, the Kurds are still there, the land is still there, the flag is still there, the language is still there, the question is still there. So this question must be solved. And the issues of the
Right.
Middle East will not be solved without solving the issue of the Kurdish people, because you cannot solve the issues of the Middle East without solving the issue of 14 million people. I mean, 14
You
million
know, this,
people in this.
yeah. There's,
So
Brian, if I may,
I
there's
don't.
a perfect follow up here. Perfect
Yeah,
follow up
please go ahead.
because you mentioned, so in Iraq in particular, uh, the defeat of um, ISIS was really to be credited to the efforts of the Kurdish forces. There's no doubt, right? And at the time, the United States relied heavily um, on the efforts of the Kurdish forces, supported them, um, and I know from our conversations at the time, it was a period of great horror and terror uh, in northern Iraq, and for you. But then, as a result of the sort of heightened awareness that the Kurdish people received during that period, was also afterwards a time of great hope. Um, the shorthand description is the United States then abandoned the Kurds after that immediately. And my question is, what is the sentiment right now, at least in among Iraqi Kurds, towards the United States, um, and how do you reflect on that period and all the sacrifices that the Kurdish people made during that time, with all of the hopes that went with those sacrifices? What is our sort of standing or status among the Kurdish people right now?
Well, I think since we are living in this globalized age, all these areas are interconnected. What's happening right now in Kurdistan might be true for the United States. That's why I want to refer this to ISIS. When ISIS emerged in 2014 in Kurdistan and Iraq, that was a new wave of terrorism, unexpected, and
Mhm.
somehow a modern wave of terrorism that was using and taking advantage out of technology, probably more dangerous than the previous ones, like from the Zealots to anarchists to the modern to the classic wave of terror from Palestine and Israel issues, then to Al Qaeda. ISIS was different from all of those, and I think that we could not fight ISIS alone. Not Kurds, not the United States, neither anybody. We all fought ISIS together. I mean, Kurdish people fought ISIS with the support of the international coalition forces, especially the US and the UK and France. And I think that even other forces in Iraq, I mean, the Iraqi forces and forces in Syria, the opposition groups, all fought ISIS and they rolled back ISIS to its place. But still ISIS is there. I mean, the idea is there, honestly, because you
Mhm.
can bombard the people, but you cannot bombard the ideology. The ideology still
Right.
exists. That's dangerous. Uh, for that time, the United States was supporting the Kurdish people a lot. They equipped the Kurdish people. They gave lots of support to the Kurdish people. But in 2017, that was a different situation. That was during the referendum. There are different ideas and different arguments on this subject, Joel. I can say that some people believe that the US left us alone. Some people believe that no, the United States did not leave us alone, but they give us lots of promises. We had to listen to them. I do believe that we had to listen to the United States back to referendum area. Okay, because we had to wait. We waited for centuries. We could have waited some for a decade. What happened actually? Nothing. Okay, so we do consider the US as a good ally of the Kurdish people, both in Syria and in Iraq Kurdistan as well. We do consider the West as good coalitionists, actually, good friends, like Germany, like France, like Italy, like the United Kingdom. Still, we have the Italian people training the Kurdish Peshmerga forces. We have Germans as well here. We have French people here as well. We have US friends here as well. We have diplomats. We have delegationists monthly and weekly from the US, from the West to the Kurdistan. We have our delegations to the West as well. But we do expect more from that. We do
Mhm.
expect the support of the United States for the Kurds in Syria right now, because the situation is very, very bad. I mean, lots
Mhm.
of forces under the name of Turkey are fighting Hasada and Qasada, the two Kurdish forces who are fighting ISIS, and we're fighting ISIS and have been fighting ISIS since 2011. Okay, that's one. Second, lots of challenges are facing the Kurdish people in Syria right now. We just don't want to let them people, dying there without having any protection. We were allies and we have been allies for a long time, and we do consider the US as a good friend and a good ally. We do expect them, and we do expect the US government to protect the Kurdish people in Syria. And that might be the top priority for the Kurdish people right now, to protect the Kurdish people in Syria and to negotiate with them, to help them and support them to participate in the government, and to participate, an active participation actually, in the constitution and formation of the government in the coming future.
Karwan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about just switching to everyday life for the Kurdish people. My guess is it's very different in the four different countries. So it's an autonomous region that is fairly set in Iraq, and my understanding is things are better there. Syria, you're just saying, is effectively still a war zone, coming out of civil war, still in civil war, and the people need a lot of help. And then Turkey and Iran are still under effectively authoritarian governments. What is life like for the Kurdish people in the different regions?
Well, it might be it might be very difficult to talk about the situation since they don't have right to participate in the political process. That's one. Second, they are abandoned from lots of life rights in general, that alienable rights actually. Like for example, they don't have the chance to participate in the schools or study in the schools in the Kurdish language. The situation is really bad. It's not really good, especially in these two parts of these two countries, from Turkey and Iran. So we do expect after, in this year, there are negotiations rise upon with Abdullah Öcalan, the head of PKK from Imrali, and with the Turkish government. So we expect that things might be changing very soon. I don't know exactly whether that's going to happen or not. He might be released from prison, which has been there for almost 25 years, I think, from now. It was 1999, and almost 20,
Mhm.
25 years. So I think if Öcalan is out, he might be able to solve the issue of the Kurdish people in Turkey. But for part of Iran, honestly, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not really sure I am not really optimistic about it for the time being.
So, Karwan, you've been talking about the problems in Syria and how they're so much worse, and that's what's in the news now. What do the Kurdish people in Syria need? What are the problems that they're facing right now, and what can be done for them either by a new Syrian government or by external parties?
Well, first and foremost, actually, we have to talk about the issue what really Turkey wants against the Kurdish people. That's one, because we have to solve this issue first before all of the issues that we have, because there are lots of Turkish forces fighting under the name or under the umbrella of the Turkish government, fighting the Kurdish people in Syria, and that has made
Mhm.
life very difficult for the Kurdish people in Syria right now. So we have to solve this issue. That's what we want as the top priority for the Kurdish people. Second, we do know that the threat of ISIS, as I talked about, is still there. So we have to be organized again, and we have to be strong enough to fight ISIS back on the borders of Syria. So we have to be strong enough not to let ISIS in Syria again. So third, we do want a government right now in Syria. The Syrian people might be talking on this issue better than myself, because I'm living in a different part of Kurdistan. So they might know exactly what they want as the government. But in general, what we want to have our rights being protected, respected, and participate in the government in a way that all the minorities feel that this government belongs to all of them. The
Very
coming
good.
government and the
Is
constitution
there
as well.
So I'm just thinking about the map out loud, and you're talking about ISIS
Okay.
a lot. So the Kurdish region of Syria is in the north, and ISIS is just below it. Is there some group that would be set to control that region? Would that end up being a part of a Kurdish region, a part of a bigger Syrian government? I'm not sure, what kind of affiliations other than ISIS the people have in that group just to the south of the Kurdish region, because that seems to be where all the problems from ISIS are coming in. Is that accurate?
What do you mean by other groups? Which type of groups you mean?
So, in general, when you look at
Various armed
Syria,
groups.
yeah,
Yeah, the various
armed
armed
groups, there are different factions, or whether there were different groups that participated in the recent revolution. Is anyone based in that area other than ISIS? Are there people who lay claim to
No, no,
that
no. The Kurdish
area
people are based in
other
this. No, 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 no. In the northeast of Syria, only the Kurdish people are based there.
than
As
okay,
I told you that,
got it.
yeah, there are lots of people. I mean, under the umbrella of Turkish forces fighting the Kurdish people in this area. I don't know exactly what they are called. I don't know exactly who they are. I don't know exactly what they want, except destroying the democracy and freedom and sovereignty of Syrian government in general.
Right. No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Can you describe how are relations between the Kurdish government in northern Iraq with the government in Baghdad? Are things pretty stable and calm? Are they tense? Is there, I mean, in other words, how does Iraq proper view the political situation in Erbil and points north? I see you
Well,
smiling. Do we have to?
as I told you, that we established the government in 2005 together, and we wrote the
Yeah.
constitution, and this constitution was agreed upon by all the Iraqi people because it was voted by the Iraqi people. And through this constitution, we have some rights, especially we have some articles related to the Kurdish people regarding the Kurdistan region, Article 111, 112, 117, 110, 120, and 115 and 114. These are the main articles that we have to discuss when we talk about the issues between Baghdad and Erbil. I mean, Erbil by Erbil, I mean the Kurdistan government of Iraq.
Yeah.
So,
Does the Constitution
as
refer to the region as Kurdistan?
yes, yes,
Okay.
Kurdistan region of Iraq. This way, yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
from 2005 to 2014, we almost didn't have lots of issues between Baghdad and Erbil. I mean, things were going smoothly, especially when Talabani was present in Baghdad, as he was the president of Iraq and he was from the patron of Kurdistan, from Kurdistan region. But after 2014, and even before that, actually, there were some issues between Kag Masoud Barzani, who back then was the president of Kurdistan region, and Nouri al-Maliki, who was the prime minister of Iraqi government. And this issue somehow led to the deeper issues between the two sides. And they were pilot issues, actually. In 2014, the Iraqi government cut the budget of the Kurdistan region, and this budget was almost 17%. That was almost $13 billion annually to the Kurdistan region. After cutting this, and there were other issues, other crises happened. The price of oil collapsed internationally and globally. That's the second one. The third one, ISIS emerged on the borders of the Kurdistan region and Iraq. And all these issues worsened the situation in the Kurdistan region and directed to a very bad future. So after this time, issues were there between the Kurdistan region and the Iraqi government. Most of the issues were about the oil articles, actually, Article 111 and Article 112, which had two sections, Section A and Section B. The Iraqi government was translating the article, and they were saying that the Kurdistan government does not have right to sell oil independently. And the KRG was claiming that no, that's not true. KRG has rights to sell oil independently. Okay, so this issue was pending, and it was there until 2022, when the Paris court decided that KRG does not have right to sell oil independently, and KRG had to hand everything to Baghdad. So even now, the issues are existing because the salaries of the Kurdish government and the Kurdistani people should come from Baghdad. I mean, all the salaries should come from Baghdad, and now we have this issue. The Iraq government is claiming that KRG is not holding the responsibility, and the Prime Minister and the Kurdistan cabinet of the Kurdistan regional government is claiming that Baghdad is not holding the responsibility. So we do have issues, but I think that these issues can be solved. They can be solved through the constitution, as once again, because this constitution is for all the Iraqi people, and all the articles can be translated in the Iraqi parliament within the observation of the international community. They can come and observe the situation, and we can have new laws, especially about oil and gas, as it's supposed to be there, and these issues can be solved. Okay. As for Article 140, still it is there. It's about the referendum in the disputed areas, disputed territories between, as we call Kirkuk, Badr, Zastan, Khanaqin, Mandali, and some areas from Mosul. All these areas, there should be a referendum whether there are the majority is the Kurdish people or the Arab people or the Turkmen people. Okay, Still, it has not been held. This referendum has not been held. It's been there since 2005, and now it's 2025. It's 20 years almost. Okay, so we do have issues with the Iraqi government, but these issues can be solved. I think that we are living in the same country. We are all Iraqis. We are Kurds through Iraq. We are Iraqis as well. We do hold the Iraqi passport, and we have to solve our issues through negotiations with the Iraqi government because we do participate in the government. We
So
have
you
members of
mentioned
the parliament. Yes, Brian, go ahead.
you mentioned oil and natural gas. If I can interrupt you for a second, and then we can get back to the government. How important are natural resources? Are there a lot of them in the Kurdish region of Iraq? And then what about the other three countries? Is this a significant part of the conflict? Is a fight over natural resources?
I think yes. I think yes. If we talk about oil fields in Kurdistan region, we have to talk about two phases of oil fields. For example, the phase before referendum and the phase after referendum. Because before referendum, even the oil fields in Kirkuk were under the presidency of the Kurdistan region, were under control of the Kurdistan region. But after referendum, the two oil fields in Kirkuk got back to control of the Iraqi government. Now Iraqi government is controlling them. As for Kurdistan region, I think that we have almost 13 to 14 oil fields right now, and these oil fields are very important. But the issue is about the contracts because the KRG signed PCS contract, means production sharing contracts. That this, I'm sure that you have an idea about this contract. So another type of this contract is service contract, which is Iraqi government is signing these contracts. So now even that's the issue between the two sides. Baghdad is saying that we don't really pay all this cost recovery money for the companies through the production sharing contracts, and Baghdad and the KRG is saying we are not able to compensate these companies because Shell, Chevron, Exxon, and lots of other companies, international companies, were here and they're investing in oil fields in the Kurdistan region. So if we talk about the national resource or hydrocarbon file in KRG or in Iraq, it is very important, honestly, because the majority of money, as we know that we have a rental region, as we do have a rental state in Iraq, as
Right.
many Middle Eastern countries and GCC countries. So
Yeah.
I mean, we mostly depend on oil in Kurdistan
Yeah.
region, and Iraq the same. Iraq mostly depends on oil, and that's where the salaries come from. That's where the
In
money
terms
comes
of
from.
these contracts, let me just clarify for our audience because this is something most Americans don't understand. Iraq, the Kurdish region, is like most of the world. The U.S. is very different. Individuals don't own the oil. The oil is a resource of the people and of the country, and the country and the region sign contracts with outside companies to drill for the oil, to ship the oil, things like that. So that's what you're talking about with the contracts,
Yes.
which is an important distinction that Americans might not get. Picking up with that, though, what about the other states in Syria and Turkey and Iran? Are those oil rich areas too, or do those have the resources not as important there in those other three states?
we we don't have the issue of oil in other parts of Kurdistan. We do have the issue of soil. We do have the
Mhm.
issue of freedom. We do have the issue of humanity. We do have the issue of protecting our rights in this area, especially as again, I'm getting back to this point again and again, especially in Syria, because those people fought
Mhm.
ISIS. Those people have been there for a long time, for centuries. As I talked about from Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, from the Ayyubi dynasty. And they fought ISIS. They supported the international community to fight ISIS back. And they protected this area, and now this part of Syria is fighting for soil and is fighting for rights. It's fighting for international rights and regional rights and human rights in general. So
Well,
Very
that's
important difference.
yeah.
yeah,
This
yeah,
well, then I'll ask this question because it is 2025 now. In 17 days, Donald Trump becomes president of the United States again. Um, and we've heard your expressions of what would be needed, particularly from the Kurdish perspective in Syria. Uh, and as you were making those points, in my mind, was rolling. Well, that's not going to happen in a Trump administration. Um, so, could you perhaps, um, think about out loud what you think the situation might end up becoming? given the expectation that uh, Trump is going to uh, more isolate the United States, not only from the whole world, but particularly from the issues around the Middle East, the myriad issues. How do you see things spinning out, given that real potential that the United States is going to sort of say this isn't our problem?
Well,
What will happen?
a lot is going to happen. Bloodbath, massacres, like what happened in Rwanda. Uh, well, I think we do expect from President Trump that his administration might have, I mean, we do expect that he's going to have an open eye on this area, especially Kurds in Syria and Kurds in Iraq. We do expect, for Iraq in general, we do expect to support the Iraq government to protect its sovereignty. Right now, we do have this issue. We do have the issue of stability and sovereignty in Iraq. Turkey is entering from lots of parts of Kurdistan of Iraq, from Duhok and from other parts of from Bradost area, and we do expect that the Iraqi government protects the sovereignty within the support of President Trump's administration. We do expect that. That's one. Second, we do expect a great support from President Trump and his administration towards Syrian Kurds and the Syrian government as well. We do want and we do expect to, and we are looking forward to having a democratic government in Syria and a democratic constitution in Syria that can guarantee the rights of all the people, including the minorities, and these people can live together in Syria and renew, I mean, rebuild this area and this country, and make it a better place because these people were living under dictatorship for almost 40 years, and that's not really a short time. That's a long time. I mean, you saw and you witnessed these prisoners and the prisoners who were there. You witnessed the bad situation in Syria. So we do expect from Mr. President Trump's administration that he is going to support all this kind of ideas, as these are the major principles of the United States: democracy, justice, freedom, etc., and so on. We don't expect anything other than this from his administration and any other administration in the United States, actually, from Democrats and from Republicans, because we do believe that the U.S. is abided by the Constitution, and this Constitution is mostly, I mean, it's very clear to all of us that uh, it is written based on freedom, justice, democracy, and supporting their allies and protecting and preserving the rights and human rights regionally and internationally. Syria is a part of the world, and KRG is a part of the world. Iraq is a part of this world. So once again, we are living in this globalized age. Whatever happens in Iraq and in Syria is going to happen in the United States as well. It's going to happen in the West in general. When ISIS appears here, it's going to appear. I mean, the ramifications are going to be very clear in the US. They will be there. They will be knocking your door. Trust me for that. I mean, if you don't take action, the situation will not be good, neither in Syria nor in the Middle East in general.
Joel, that sounds like a pretty good sum up. Do you have anything else before we go to our final question here?
Go for your final question.
Excellent. So, Karwan, we
Fasten
do
your
this.
seatbelt, Karwan.
We do this. We do this to all of our guests. You just laid out a fantastic 2 minute big picture view of what's happening and what could happen. If you had a magic wand right now and you could do one or two things or have the world community do just one or two things to accomplish these things and to make them better, what would you want to see done this year? What big
Definitely,
things would you want to see done?
definitely, without no hesitation, Kurds in Syria.
Yep, makes a lot of sense given everything we've
Excellent.
talked
Because
about. There's
because
a lot of
because
work
in
to be done
Iraq,
for that.
because Brian, because in Iraq we do have rights, and we are in the government. We are participating in the government. We have one country, one constitution, one government together. And still we have threats and challenges on the way, but we can solve these issues and challenges through negotiations and arguments
Yeah.
with the Iraq government, through and through dialogues with the United States and other international forces. But in Syria, we do want to see this. We do want to see, I mean, not only us, the Kurdish people, I mean, the world right now is waiting for having or establishing a democratic country, a free country, and a just country for all the people. A
Yeah.
constitution that can protect and preserve the rights of the Kurdish people, the minorities in general, the Arabs, the Kurds, and all the people, Shiites, Sunnis, all of them together, living on the same land, protecting the land, and I mean, just forgetting all the sorrows and ashes and all these issues that they saw under the dictatorship.
A
Yeah,
free and
we talk
peaceful
about our
Syria.
Constitution.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
was going
talk
to
about
say,
our Constitution all the time. It's amazing how
yeah.
important it is to have that functional Constitution that actually works for people. It's just absolutely
Yes.
incredible to
They
see.
don't usually ring the phone before they come for you, Brian. Uh, I was going to say a free and peaceful Syria. I don't know that people in the United States really appreciate a free, stable, and peaceful Syria would have such momentous implications for the entire region and really ultimately for global security. It really could end up being a key. I think about Lebanon. I think about Israel, Palestine. I think about Iraq and Iran's future, but ultimately for European security as well. Syria is really an important place,
Oh yeah,
uh, and uh, and
yeah.
and
And
and I
everything comes
worry
down
about the
to
coming U.S. administration.
immigration issues, and other
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
and will the new Trump administration have any appreciation or concern or interest in that? I think is going to be enormously important. Karwan, it has been a delight to have this time with you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for giving us of your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I wish
That was a
you
great pleasure.
nothing but continued safety, happiness, and success.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you
thank
very
you for
much,
your
Joel.
time.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks for giving me the spot and for having such a great chance to talk about a very important question. I hope they will be solved soon. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Karwan.
you all for tuning in. Thank you, David, for producing this.
Have a good day.
Please like and share and tell everyone about the World Discord podcast, and we will see you next time.